Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. So there's been a post made by Riot announcing just a whole bunch of mid-season changes and just direction and just things overall regarding the mid-season. And it's a lot of really cool and interesting information, including of course giving us a video of what looks to be some of the abilities shown from the tank rework we have with Maokai, Sejuani, and Zac. So I want to start this off by kind of watching the video together, give you guys a pretty cool kind of teaser, as if you will, to what's coming up for the tank update and what new abilities they have and things like that. So let's take a quick look at the video, see what's crack-a-lacking. Let's go. So these are the three big ones, of course, right? Maokai, Sejuani, Zac. Holy, that looks pretty busted. I'm not gonna lie. Like, what the fuck? That's Sejuani's new ultimate. Pretty cool, actually. What the fuck? And there's a new Rift Herald as well. Kind of a cringe video, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why. The music is kind of cringe, but regardless, let's take a look at the post. So they made a really big post talking about a whole bunch of changes for the mid-season update, which is going to be coming pretty soon. And as you guys know, if you don't know, the mid-season update is essentially just a whole bunch of new changes that are trying to implement into League of Legends to kind of make it feel fresh and new again and just change things up for the better, hopefully. So, the first thing that they talk about is actually the Rift Herald. Now, I'll read this with you guys quickly. So, essentially, the Rift Herald is going to be reworked, or reworking, or whatever the hell the proper word is, but it's going to be a new, a new Rift Herald completely. So essentially they're saying how, yeah, it kind of sucks how the Rift Herald has never really been truly the big focus. Hasn't really been as big of a focus as they wanted her apparently to be, right? So they're trying to change that around. By here, the Rift Herald, so they're not doing the buff approach anymore. So when you kill the Rift Herald, she doesn't drop this buff that you pick up, you get it for 20 minutes or whatever. Now instead it drops the Herald's Eye as she retreats into the void, lasting in your inventory for a few minutes and granting the empowered recall while held, which is pretty cool actually. So it's only for a few minutes, which is not too long actually. So you can kind of keep it in inventory for a while and just try to maybe go to lane, get a few minions and do your thing, and then recall again and try to abuse it as much as you can before actually activating the item and using the item, because that's what they talk about next. Using the eye before it expires summons the Herald back to the Rift under your team's banner, so essentially on your team's side, sending her down the nearest lane as a structure smashing siege engine. She says hello by ramming into buildings from a distance, dealing massive damage. From there, she'll steadily smash it to rubble before moving on to the next objective down the lane. So essentially, she becomes this almost like a minion on your team or for your team, going down a specific lane, whether it's top, mid, or bot lane, just depending on where you essentially use the item, and just goes ham. Just literally goes ham and just starts pushing it hardcore. This kind of reminds me of something similar to York Ultimate, the new York Ultimate, where you just use it and the big ghost thing just goes down the lane and just starts pushing it really hard, summoning ghouls and stuff. Very similar concept, if you will, right? Except this, I believe, will be probably even more OP and just more difficult to deal with, which makes sense because it only happens, I'm assuming, once a game. So for opponents, finding the Rift Herald in lane is similar to finding her in the pit. She's still tanky as heck, so poking her in the eye is still the fastest way to get her gone. Now, obviously, killing her from the front is still normal, but hitting the back where the eye opens up will still do that bonus true damage, I'm assuming. There are a few differences to be aware of, though. She is no longer has an interest in fighting champions. While this means she doesn't hit back, careful for the AoE damage, because apparently she has some kind of abilities, I'm sure, while she's pushing that just does a bunch of AoE. So you can obviously get hit by that, which I'm assuming is a decent AoE size. It also means you won't be able to deter her from her demolition work. Second, Summoning Sickness has left her vulnerable to crowd control, so you can definitely use a Morgana Q or a Lux Q or Elise Cocoon or whatever to keep her kind of at bay for as long as possible before she gets to the actual to the tower and just starts doing her work. Finally, the Herald's damage in lane is directly tied to her health. Take every opportunity you can to will her down. So apparently the damage she deals is directly proportionate to how much HP, the percentage I'm assuming that she still has. So the lower HP, the weaker she naturally gets, aka the less damage she also deals. So pretty damn cool new change of pace here for the Rift Herald. But next we have Sejuani for the tank update. Now, Sejuani is essentially being changed from being a champion that just solely relies on her ultimate and essentially is an ult bot to just redesigning her to be more of an actual barbarian kind of champion that really truly leads her team into battle. So, a redesigned Permafrost compromises the bulk of Sejuani's combat contributions and makes her the war leader she was meant to be. Passively, Sejuani and her melee allies, all her melee allies, apply frost damage, I'm assuming within range, of course, of her, apply frost to enemies. And unlike Braum's passive, Sejuani does not need to be the one to actually start the stacking, which honestly sounds kind of busted. Once the target's Once a target has reached max stacks, Sejuani can pinpoint and can't even speak. Can point and click stun them with permafrost, right? So essentially, boom, you get the max amount of stacks, whatever that is, maybe 4, 5, or whatever. And then you just instantly point and click, boom, permafrost, and it does a lot of damage, right? Should she attack a frozen target, however, she'll shatter them for major damage. She's at her best in a 2v2 or 3v3 scenario, which has the best chance of permafrosting every enemy encountered. Now, most of her abilities are getting updates as well, like her other abilities. For instance, Frost Armor now protects her boar as she charges into the battle, granting her bonus resistances and slow immunity. Her new ability that got replaced with Flail of the Northern Winds, called Winter's Wrath, is now a 2-part swing slam combo that lets Sejuani strike and stack Frost in any direction while he continues to move. We saw this in the video here. What is this ability? This one here. Whoop! That right there. Glacial Prison, which we saw at the very end, no longer stuns the entire enemy team, but instead it turns the battleground around its explosion into a slowing zone that gives Sejuani her warband time to get into frost stacking range, which and it creates a nice AoE frost area. Just slows everyone down, you know, nice initiation, and now it seems like her kit just completely revolves around her passive, the frost, which is pretty cool. Next, we have Maokai. Even among tanks, Maokai is pretty generalist. There's no situation where he's a bad pick, but there's no situation where he's a great pick either. The Twisted Trend fights the same in every situation. Activate Vengeful Maelstrom, throw in the rest of your abilities, and whatever. In terms of basic abilities, Saplings deal more damage when tossed into brush, giving him strategic value as little sentries and adding new considerations to Maokai's jungle clears where he chooses to fight. Meanwhile, we're sharpening Sap Magic's Identity, which I believe is his passive, as a passive that saps magic instead. So it now operates off of a cooldown, and while Maokai still speeds it up through his own spellcasts, only enemy abilities that hit him grant him the same reduction. Once your battlecast, breathe easy, .champions. This leaves him vulnerable against basic attack-oriented champions like Tryndamere or Fiora, so now he's kind of more focused towards like a spell-oriented champion in terms of what he's facing, but even more resilient against frequent casters such as Karthus or Corgi. So kind of very, almost like a Kassadin-ish feel to it with his Kassadin's E ability, very similar concept. The biggest change of Maokai's update is to his ultimate, which has now been completely redesigned. Nature's Grasp summons a lane-wide wall of roots, which we saw in the video, that slowly advances forward, each one rooting the first enemy champion hit. The wall has devastating teamfight potential, but its slow speed demands that the Maokai plans around it. To find success, the Twisted Trend has to corral his enemies into the wall's path and keep them there until the nature runs its course. We saw that here. That's still it's pretty slow actually. But each of those roots, so that could be some pretty disgusting engage. And then the final big change we have to the tanks is of course Mr. Zac Rooney himself. In terms of unique skill set, Elastic Slingshot affords Zac the ability to, okay, we don't care about that. That said, Zac runs out of cool stuff to do once he's used his exciting parts of his kit to make his entrance. We want to bring other parts of Zac's kit up to Elastic Slingshot's standards, and we're giving him 2 new forms of crowd control to do so. First of which, Stretching Strikes, which I believe is his Q at the moment, is undergoing a big change. We've added an S, stretching, to the end of it. Oh, strikes, okay, so it's more than one. First, Zac throws a blob out, throws out a blob hand that sticks onto the first enemy he hits. Once he latches onto something, his next basic attack becomes equally sticky, and he'll use his noodly appendages to slam both targets into each other. So the leak was apparently right. The leak was actually right. Zac goes like, psh, snapping it together, which is actually pretty OP sounding, honestly. Let's Bounce is also getting a facelift. On cast, Zac flattens himself into a puddle and has the option to charge up for a few seconds. If he lets go without charging, he'll bounce in place and knock back enemy champions, similar to what happens today. But if he stays in the puddle form for at least 1 second, however, that's a weird way to say however, things change drastically. On release, Zac scoops up every enemy on top of him and schleps them all over to a target location, which is what we saw here as well. That's all. And he charges it, and he just takes them off. He just literally grabs them all and just flings them backwards to, I'm assuming, wherever he wants, which, if that sounds really OP, man. If you land that on a squishy and you bring them back to your team, I don't know. Sounds pretty busted. Next, I'll quickly go over the durability items. So we have Adaptive Helmet, which I made a video talking about. This item is essentially whenever you get the same spell cast on you over and over and over, it'll just do less. It'll be less and less effective. So against someone like a Cassiopeia, for instance, it'll be very, very useful against, you know, those kind of MR champions, right? Not much to say here. I already kind of talked about this, so I don't want to say too much, but essentially, once you've been hit by a spell, Adaptive Helmet reduces the magic damage you take from that same spell within a short window. That's pretty much all you need to know, honestly. Gargoyle Stoneblade is pretty busted. It's a super tanky kind of item where essentially you use it and it gives you bonus HP and stuff like that. And then if you have certain effects such as having X amount of champions around you, enemy champions, the effects are just flat out like double almost, if not even more than double. So essentially, if you're someone that stacks HP and you're very tanky, this item is perfect, especially if you're someone that also likes to team fight and have like as many enemy champions around you as possible. So that's pretty much that. I already talked about this item in my other video, so I'm assuming most of you know that already. Next, they have very quick description here about item health versus resistances. Essentially, on these kind of items, what they did was they lowered the HP that you gain and instead increased the actual resistance. So MR, armor, right? So this gives more MR, these give more armor, and all of them give less HP, I believe, right? That's what they did. And the reason they did that is because currently, if you get like, if you rush Sunfire, for instance, you get a lot of HP from that, right? But it's a little too effective against all damage types. This should be more effective against armor types, not give you a lot of HP, so it's still actually pretty damn good even against AP champions. Now, little less AP, so AP champions can still be effective against you, or rather little less HP, but it's still just as effective against its specific resistance purpose. So in this case, this is still just as good against people that deal 80 damage, but slightly less effective against people that deal magic damage, and vice versa for Spirit Visage, for instance. Next, we have the Guardian's Angel, which they changed to now have kind of a little bit more offensive build path that has a bit of AD in it, to focus on the fact that squishies and carries will want to get it as well, rather than just being solely like this tanky item that only tank champions really want, but doesn't really offer too much other than just flat resistances for squishies or carries, So that's kind of the purpose behind that. Then they're doing a little bit of a contribution clarity. Not much to say here, honestly. Essentially, they're just trying to make it more visible as to when you use like certain items, or you just, for support players, like they'll have more stats to show off at the end of the screen. When, the game is done, people always look at stats like damage done and stuff like that, or just your overall KDA. But now they'll give more ways to show off how much, you actually did in the game. And just better ways to essentially just show off if you're crowd controlling someone, if you are crowd control and things like that. Just overall clarity in the game. For instance, they'll show things like how long you CC'd enemies for, how effective your warding and counter warding is, how much damage you mitigated via shields and resistances, and things like that, which is pretty cool. Now, the final thing for the mid-season update, trying to wrap up this video so it's not too long, is support quests, right? There's a lot of information here, but essentially what they're doing now is they're trying to make these 3 items for the supports like actually focus on support champions. So essentially, all these items have like a quest feature to it now. Once the quest is finished, they'll upgrade into some kind of bonus effect, or just more just OP version of itself. So for Ancient Coin, which has a completely new passive now, instead of giving you just this boring ass gold whenever someone dies, instead now, whenever an enemy minion dies that you didn't kill, it'll drop coins, different types of coins that'll give you either mana or gold, and you collect those coins to complete the quest for the Ancient Coin, which once you do finish it, you'll gain an elixir that instantly grants a skill point when consumed. So you'll pretty much essentially have all your abilities maxed out by level 17 rather than 18, which is pretty cool. And takedowns on enemy champions grant gold and restore mana. Relic Shield, once you finish this quest, gives you a shield that regenerates out of combat, which is pretty cool. Which is a nice, obviously kind of initiator, kind of frontline support type thing to have, which is pretty cool, I have to say. Spell Thief's Edge, tribute procs against a burst, or grants a burst of movement speed. Pretty simple, but I guess there's champions that want extra movement speed to have more mobility or whatever. For whatever reason, we'll obviously find this one useful, right? So that's kind of the idea there. There you have it. I mean, a lot of changes for the mid-season update. We have the 3 tanks, we have the Rift Herald, of course, we have the changes to just visual clarity within the game and stuff, the actual tank items and durabilities and 2 new items, support quests, and there's probably even more information that they haven't fully released yet. So there you guys have it. A whole bunch of information for the mid-season update, which hopefully will hit the PBE server pretty soon. But either way, if you enjoyed this video, boom, hit it with that like button. If you're excited for these updates in the mid-season coming to the live servers, hopefully, and just League of Legends in general, hopefully pretty soon, drop that like button to show your support and excitement and all that good stuff. But thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you for the next video. Peace.